Wassail, beautiful people. That's in a funny old place today. My voice feels like it's not within me, but stepping outside of me. Oh, and it's my brother's, or would have been my brother's 61st birthday today. Although you won't be seeing it that day, so I'm recording this on the 5th because it's good to share the warping of time. So I want to begin a series of 22 lessons on tarot and the major arcana, because there's a lot of misnomers out there. I want to be very gentle in the language, where people are just getting the cards wrong. Because I don't want to really overly criticize people, but do some work, do some research. So often the tarot's origins are considered to be in France, which is where I am at the moment. Je suis en France. But there are earlier versions that go back to Italy, particularly the Duke of Milan's family. I think they kind of commissioned a deck 1440, 15th century. And then there are other decks. There's one, I just need to check its name, the Sola Busca deck. Oh, I had a golden deck I bought in Buenos Aires, which is a lot of Italian diaspora. Interesting. Anyway, and I met lots of people connected to readers out there. There's a really big tradition of tarot in Argentina. But I sent the golden deck. It was huge. The card, even I with my enormous hands couldn't shuffle them, and they were all embossed with gold and patterning. It was absolutely gorgeous. But I sent it to Kathy because I just couldn't carry all the decks I'd accumulated. And it's funny because sometimes now I wish that I was somewhere nested so that I could just dig into the imagery on old decks. I'd also like to travel to some libraries and go and see early copies. Like there's something, I think, in Yale that's part of a deck that shows that the Italian origins were before Marseille. Also, on top of all of that, there's another story where they are the tablets, the emerald tablets of Thoth. And that's interesting because of the Aleister Crowley deck, the Thoth Tarot. But again, look, symbols are really key to understanding our divinity. That's just the way it is. That's why I thoroughly enjoyed creating the 78 card Liffruma deck, which was created because I wanted to have a rune symbol for each of the tarot cards for a deck, a super deck I was creating. And I am going to go on to create that. I've already downloaded, and that's part of what this series is about. It's what can we do again together, because I really enjoyed rune raking with all of you. Here, maybe in this series, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a series of bind runes that I've downloaded that are all runes from the Liffruma deck. So it means that the major arcana have 22 bind runes, and the bind runes help to show us the pip card energy that's underneath the different cards, because the major arcana are a huge story arc from 0 to 21. And they take us on a journey, and sometimes we skip steps on the journey and then we have to go backwards and then we go forwards. That's why we have all this, 2 steps, 1 step forward, 2 steps back, 2 steps forwards, 1 step back. Maybe they're both correct. But yeah, so we go on this journey where we're going through things. Recently, I knew I was on the moon moving into the sun. And then from the sun, it's interesting. I'm just thinking about the solstice coming, might have some kind of solution. I don't feel like I've quite reached judgment and then completion, and then some new golden path spiritual arcana arc will open. That's the point of this. There's a series of journeys that the cards take you on, and they reveal different energies at different points. So when I kind of criticize, and I do, readers who just do not comprehend the more splendidly divine aspects of the major arcana, it's because they're not on that journey yet. They're not seeking that level of frequency, which is what I, again, and I need to keep saying this to you, that's what I love about you who follow my channel, because you're all willing to explore much higher and much more divine frequencies than many people who just want to continue their experience in with the physical world as a dominant factor. My problem is I go so high up esoterically that I forget every now and then to wire back into the world, and that's also a problem. You know, we need to understand these things, but I seek answers always. So we're going to begin. I'm 6 minutes in talking to you all. We're going to begin with the Fool card. So here is the bind rune. It's very simple. It's just Ginnungagap and Is. And that's there because the card Ginnungagap that we see here, this is everything behind the veil inside here, and this is consciousness pouring in to physical space. So before I explain what's in Ginnungagap, I need to sort of express this. I mean, I know I'm going to get the giggles in all of this because there's so many concepts. So this Ginnungagap, there is a threshold on the very edge of the esoteric. It's sort of like, oh, I'm so glad I pulled this card out. So look, this is almost the esoteric realm of the Ginnungagap. And then this is that threshold point just here. This is the physical realm of shadows and light. And so this is the point at which consciousness is staring down the lens of a microscope into all the possibilities of physical existence, endless realms of physical existence, because inside the Ginnungagap, in the esoteric spaces that are just pure energy, it's limitless, absolutely limitless. So let me just read this poem. Before all, the veiled void strains its velvet fanfare of silence, breathing. Shimmering, glimmering dust emerges, swarming and forming, fated to become something new. Life must be. The physical screams to exist. Potential without, from within all and everything. Because life has to be, life must become. And it's interesting, it's a huge rock on this card. It's a massive menhir. And inside the menhir, as I've just been describing in all of these videos recently, they're windows where consciousness looks into the world. How does it do it? Well, rock has crystal and quartz and all kinds of energies hidden within it, and that is a way to connect and peep through. So this is the birth of the physical, to trust that there is life outside of the esoteric realms of spiritual joy, pleasure, and comfort. And there's something in that that's pioneering beyond imagination. The spirit of adventure awaits. That's what this really represents. So inside the Ginnungagap, we have Orthumbla, the holy cow, and she licks the salt rime, which is a frozen block of salty water. Salt, because salt is to do with materializing things. And she's in the Ginnungagap, and she's feeding milk from her udder to Ymir, who is this hermaphrodite giant who is erupting from body parts with life, often seen as monsters. But while Orthumbla licks the salt rime, where fire meets ice, the heat of her tongue touching the cow, and I saw yesterday, I watched a cow's tongue being so incredibly inquisitive and versatile around its muzzle. So she licks Buri, the first giant, from the salt rime, and then she licks others, and they come alive and they begin to create other physical life themselves, through merging and union to create something. It's interesting because they're showing me this idea of merging and merging ever upwards, but this is the beginning when the merging together creates a fountain of life, potential life. It's almost like they needed like a team. They needed a team to explore what's beyond the Ginnungagap, what's beyond the veil, what's on that threshold epiphany of the physical. And it has this east symbol, which is the frightened first steps that we take into the physical, bridging from the esoteric to the physical through this cloudy mist of salt rime and the heat rising, and not, it's almost like at first we could see and then we couldn't see, and so we needed to step into the unknown to witness, to discover. And that is the energy of the Fool card. So the other part that I want to talk about is there's something in this. This again is the Ginnungagap, but this is birthright. This is 23. It's almost the very last card. So from the beginning, almost all the way through the Elder Thuthark of runes, and we have your original birthright. What was your original birthright? Well, nothing on earth. It was nothing physical. Your original birthright is inside the veil, but there's something here that's never been there before. It's saying in the physical there are two pathways to begin with. That's how it begins. The path of being totally physical, totally animal, totally ruled by the polarity that exists in a world of shadows. And then there's a second path, which is the kind of the refining path. And it's not like, you see, and this is the thing, so many cards, so many spiritual concepts are like, ahead of you there is a crossroads. Which path do you pick? You don't. You pull those two paths together. You've got to walk both of them, or you have to split yourself and walk down two separate paths while holding hands with yourself. Maybe at the crossroads you meet your higher other self and you walk together down both paths. It has to be both paths. You can't, in a world of polarity, you can't deny one in favor of the other. And that's a mistake that I think We often do. So, let me just look at what else I've got. So I just need to, because I didn't explain. When I said the Duke of Milan earlier, that's a deck that's known as the Visconti Sforza deck. And you can look that up, 1440. It's worth digging into the origins of the Italian tarot. It's also interesting that the deck I spoke about, the Solar Busca deck, the golden one, that was the one that inspired Pamela Coleman Smith when she first drew the images, apparently, for the Rider-Waite Smith deck. So there are connections between all of those ancient symbolism, signs. We need to also remember that this was a time in art when painters were hiding symbols. Symbols are always about seeking higher truths, seeking to acknowledge the invisible energies that are around us, the invisible sun that shines on us. But we have to work to bring the energy. We have to trust, because the invisible sun is in there, but it is also here on our path. Yes, we came down on a single intention, a consciousness, and when we landed, because it's a world of light and shadows, both exist. Both of those frequencies are there, and all of this potential is the very first step that we take in the tarot deck, in life, on a spiritual journey. It all begins at zero, and then it's our journey forwards, and it will go through the major arcana in so many different ways, forwards and backwards. You know, maybe for the moment, just have a little think and say to yourself, where do you think you are within the deck? And I'm going to be explaining the whole story arc as I understand it, which is to do with, you know, divine, emotional and raw, masculine and feminine, and then how we move through an esoteric, secretive understanding within ourselves to achieve reaching the point of walking both paths in tandem. And those two paths in tandem come together to create a new path. So we begin on the path of gold, and we're looking to walk the golden path. And there are the paths, but let's just leave it there. So my suggestion to all of you, I still don't have the ability all the time to write back to you. So I would like, hopefully by the time you see this video, I will. But I'd really love it if you could all open a discussion on this channel as to what the Zero Fall card means to you, so that we can gather data together for us to amalgamate and put into this new Super Tarot deck. I will explain more about it. It's so exciting. But for me, I feel like I just need us to be creating. It thrills me making decks with you all. And you know, maybe, I don't know, maybe some of you might begin to draw artwork, and maybe this deck comes with artwork by all kinds of different people, so that every card has a different feel. I don't know, I'm just putting ideas out there. The deck will decide for itself. They always do in the end. We just start the preparatory work and then the decks take over. So it's exciting. And I'm hopefully traveling now, or have arrived already, a bit further north. I'm trying to get to see a particular stone. So anyway, wassail for now.